Hello and welcome to this second video with the E520 Hyperion processor prototype. There's a link in the description to my first video of this. Watch it after this one.
We step out of our solar system into the universe, seeking only peace and friendship.
We're going to check out some more effects, some updates. There's been tons of updates. Eric and Paul and the team are super on it in terms of updating this thing, even in the few days between the last video and this one. And I'm sure it's just going to continue to be updated and really grow into something, well, it's already amazing, to be fair, really amazing by the time this is released next year. The E520 is currently on Kickstarter. Go back it, have your say. You can have some input into what these effects will be. Go give some feedback and thoughts. All the links in the description. Let's just get stuck into checking out some other sounds, patches and effects. So here's the stereo reversing delay. Bypassing it, here's my input. And we'll go fully wet and turn this back on. Now the tap inputs or buttons are tap tempos. This is locked in with my sequence. And being in reversing delay, we can of course reverse that delay buffer. Reversing what's in the buffer and now writing backwards into the buffer. And as we come back out, what's in the buffer is flipped as it's now played forwards and writing into the buffer in that direction with each repeat coming round. Now with two ways of affecting delay time, if I actually remove my tap tempo here, your standard sample rate modulating delay time control, frozen and reversed there. And we've also got a percentage of the delay buffer used, which is a granular crossfade, so it doesn't change pitch. And you can hear this buffer being ragged around all over the place there. Let's get the tap back in. Lose the feedback. And again, here's the dry sound. Here's the wet sound with some dry back in, some feedback. We can enable a filter. Disable it of course too. Filter down that feedback path and those delays. So that's the stereo reversing delay. So here's the Deflector Shield, a classic SynthTech module in the E520 as one of the modes. This is a mono input. If I bypass that,
Secretary General of the United Nations,
you can hear is somebody talking. Now we can shift between various modes. This is frequency shifting by default, and we can blend between the left and right ins. This doesn't matter here because I've just got one input which blends across in mono. The actual shift frequency And then we have shift mode, up and down, so this is stereo, and I'll cycle through these. You can hear that frequency shifting is different on each side. We've also got two frequency control modes,
of the United Nations.
exponential and linear.
147 members.
And exponential is great for tuning in these auto
The human
pans.
inhabitants of the planet Earth. I send greetings.
You can hear that like tremolo style effect.
We step out of our solar system into the universe, seeking only peace.
And it's nice to tune in.
To teach, if we are called upon, to be taught.
Tune in these kind of nicer frequencies. Linear seems much wider ranging as you sweep around the knob.
Of this immense universe.
Let's check out some ring modulation.
With humility and
This is then the carrier oscillator that the input is modulating. We can add feedback. It adds this like kind of crispy distortion. Of course, we can CV any of this, and the final control is the wave shape. We can phase shift,
that surrounds us, and it is
which is changing that stereo phase here.
Take this step.
Be much easier to hear this in headphones.
As the Secretary General of the United Nations,
So here's the spectral delay and pitch shift. This is a stereo input, currently bypassed, bypass off. Nice stereo chord tone. Again, bypass. Of course, you can actually get delay on these. Let's say octave up and some feedback. So here's the updated Spectral Time Machine. Let's record a beat into it and then manipulate the hell out of it. Going fully wet. Let's play the recording. Oof. And there's our loop. Back to having some dry sound in. We can record again. We've just got a tiny little loop there. So for those of you that watched my video on the Acid Rain Technology chainsaw, lovely little 4 HP oscillator. You've seen this already, but we're recording this patch for the demo of Chainsaw. I thought this is such a huge part of the sound, this being fully wet over these root third 7th chords. that I thought I'd break off and film it again and just play around for the E520 video you're watching right now. This is the stereo Shimmer Reverb. Let's just have a little play around. Bring that reverb time right down. There is some feedback, so we'll still get a decent trail. Attack down. Let's get filter up. Bit more low ending. Octave up shimmer. And losing that octave up in the feedback, let's push the octave down, play a little bit higher. You can hear that octave lower in the shimmer that isn't on the dry sound. Push the reverb time. This lovely low end bloom to that shimmer. Backing those off. Couple more chords just because I really love the sound. So here's the Spectral Vocoder, a vocoder that goes way beyond your standard kind of 8, 12, 16 band vocoding. We do have a band control. With this particular patch, we're not really getting classic vocoder-like behaviour, but those higher bands, and this is in stereo now. We've got the voice in the left, the saw wave, as a modulator and carriers. We can change the sibilance, the airy breathiness that gets into that circuit, or algorithm rather. Modulate again. We can EQ tilt. Which is all extremely helpful when you've got different bands, different sources. You maybe need to tilt or play with sibilance to get the effect that you want. And there's that voice input. Feedback is active. You might think it wouldn't be, but it's a nice ringing effect. You can invert the signal, get this really unintelligible, odd, almost broken radio vibe. You can add compression to try and get a better effect out of the overall vocoding. We also have a scope mode that handily has oscilloscope settings, XY oscilloscope, frequency readings, or spectral analysis for checking your frequencies, much like an EQ plugin might have, VU meter, and a tuner. And you can play around with level, timing, triggering settings for the scope. Handy little thing to have in there, useful for getting things in tune and checking what's going on in a system. So here's the Prime Dual Tap Delay, which is an emulation of the rack unit Lexicon Primetime Delay. It's a resampling delay which allows control of both the delay line's length for granular crossfade-like effects, as well as sample rate. It sums the input to mono, so I have a single input into the E520 as a send. Here's the dry sound. This comes into my mixer. It's been sent to the E520, and the stereo outputs coming back here. On their own. I'm going to leave the dry sound in, and because this is a send, it's fully wet here, so I'm not adding in extra dry sound. Now we get control here for delay time on A and B, which are separate taps left and right. Here's A. Hear that left side changing delay time. Add a bit of feedback, you'll see what I mean. No repitch effects. That's that granular crossfade. And the same on the right hand side. Again with feedback, it's a bit more obvious. Because the input is mono, feedback from either the left A side or the right B side in this patch will feed back into the in and feed both sides. So we get some interesting multi-tap-like effects. Now the sample rate is the third option there, which is this VCO adjust. This extends the range way beyond the actual Lexicon unit. When it says calibrated, that's the expected behaviour. I have a low pass filter in the feedback paths. Shaving off the top end and changing the tone of feedback. Now the buttons here can multiply our delay time by times 1, 2, 4 or 8. Let's go to shorter times, a bit less feedback. Again, extending way beyond this Lexicon Primetime unit. We can also adjust the buffer length. Again, affecting delay time and how much delay time we can possibly have. So that's the primetime delay. So here we'll take a look at the stereo looper, and at its fullest quality of 48 kHz sampling rate, we can do 5.8 minutes of looping, which is plenty and much more than many other loopers. We can extend this to nearly 45 minutes when we actually change the resample value, which changes the sample rate, so we get into that low garbagey gargle, low quality digital audio sound, which can be really nice on your way to the lowest setting, but of course, nice high quality looping is great. It's probably what we're here for. So my dry sound, and this is a mono in, mono out, is an oscillator into a filter. As I swell that filter up, that's all there is to it, not a lot. We've got controls for the resample rate. I'm going to keep this at 1, the warble, which is a tape style warble, saturation and EQ. And with those three controls alone, we can get this kind of tape sound on sound like looping, which is dependent on the feedback. Notice the right feedback there, the one I'm wobbling, is down. I'm not going into the right input, so it's irrelevant. We can get feedback up full and do sound on sound looping as we feed the previous loop back into itself, and we can continue to overdub on itself. So I'll do this over a really short loop so we can start to hear these effects very quickly. Feedback up full, all the other settings down. let's just get a simple swelling note into this. Hitting tap, we'll see this goes into record, hit it again and it will go to overdub. And I'll leave my mix at 50-50 so I can actually hear my dry input as I'm doing it. Super simple loop. Now as I resample this, I can choose to have it quantized. I'm going to turn that off. We can hear the pitch and the speed changes with the resample rates. Super low end there, you're going to need some headphones on or some decent speakers. With quantize on, this snaps to octaves. Really useful for doing octave shifts as you want to record. Now we could record at a lower sample rate and pitch up. So if I reset this, let's go to a resampling rate of 2. Record a little phrase in this time. Because I haven't changed the resample rate, it just plays at the rate it came in. Pitch and speed is unaffected. But I can go higher. And still, of course, go lower. Coming up an octave here. We can reverse. And play around with reversing through this buffer. Now adding warble will vary the sample rate to create a warbling pitch, much like unsteady tape. Let's crank it. Really chewed up wobbly tape vibes. Saturation. When this comes back round, it's going to have this full level of saturation. Really kind of blown out distortion saturation. EQ this time. Notice the top end loss. Let's add some warble, a bit more saturation. And like tape, this is disintegrating away. If you want a sound to actually fade away, let's reset this and start again. I'm going to put a simple note in, just one more time. Simply turn the feedback down. Because I'm in overdub and feedback is up full, it's feeding the level in at the level it came out. A unity gain, times one gain if you like, simply going in. If I lower this, we can hear even without the effects that degrade the audio, the saturation, the EQ and the warble, it's just fading away. So we can mix the saturation, EQ and warble and feedback to get these decaying loops. And again, let's just try that from the off. Set these all roughly around half. Feedback almost full. And we'll record in a new loop. Let's just leave this to play. A lot duller. A bit more warbly, it's getting quieter. Let's crank some of these. And while it's doing this, we could be overdubbing. So let's start to overdub and build a decaying sound-on-sound tape-like loop. Bit too chewed up for me. Let's back some of these off. Continue to overdub. Pause will actually pause playback or recording. And then it comes back into either recording, overdubbing, or playing when it's pressed again. The tap, which is what's setting the recording and overdubbing, will also go to play. So if I hit that, we can see overdub has changed to play. I can play over this. And it hasn't overdubbed into the loop. If I press it again without resetting, it goes back to overdub, and this will go onto the loop. So balancing your dry wet, playing around with feedback and the tape-like degradation controls, you've a hell of a lot to go at with the stereo looper. Let's try it out with guitar. So here's the patch with a guitar as the input. The signal routing is guitar straight into the E520 looper, then out into a PT delay and a little bit of spring reverb. This additional colour and noise after the looping. Now I'm going to leave this a hideously long time for a video demo because I want you to hear how this disintegrates over time over longer loops. I'm going to be jumping in and out of 1 and 2 times resampling to get octave down and then octave up effects. If I record an octave down, say record something at times 1, move down to times 2, this will shift an octave, play the guitar in, shift back up, it will pitch up the new layer and put the original layer back onto its normal pitch. Likewise for recording in reverse, I can reverse what's looping, play over the top, hit reverse again for forward playback. The original loop is now back to how it was, but the just played in freshest loop is now reversing. I play around with clean looping and degrading tape-like looping. Support my work on patreon.com/DivKid. Check out the E520 on Kickstarter, and let's enjoy some guitar, very major happy looping tape noise goodness. See you next time. Cheers.